Music around the world in the 20th century. Project for the Middellang by Rayan Baeijens. French music. History of French music. French music was born in the Middle Ages with a genre close to the Gregorian plainchant called organum. It then developed under the school of Notre Dame, or the Ars Antiqua, with the conduit, a processional song. At that time, the troubadours and the trouvères asserted more the independence of lyrical art vis-à-vis the clergy. Then, in the wealthy classes, the school of Ars Nova developed around the creation of masses, but also secular songs dedicated to entertainment. The Renaissance saw the development of a polyphony and singing from the turn of the 16th to the 17th century, the beginning of the period of Baroque music. New genres appeared such as the air de cour, the ballet de cour, and the suite of dances. Instrumental music became more important. Opera was introduced in France by Jean-Baptiste Lully in the 1670s. Finally, regional, military, sailor, religious, worker, and peasant songs have reappeared in the French musical heritage in recent years, notably thanks to the Chœur Montjoie Saint-Denis. Known musicians in the 20th century in France: Pierre Boulez, Gérard Griset, Pascal Dussapin, Pierre Henry, René Leibowitz, Tristan Muraille, Pierre Schneider, Éric Tanguy, Jean-Luc Hervé. Some of them being music composers for movies: Alexandre Desplat, 1961, Jean-Michel Bernard, 1961, Pierre Adenau, 1965, Philippe Rombi, 1968, Michael Mange, 1930 to 1984, Claude Bolling, 1930, Francis Lai, 1932 to 2018, Michael Legrand, 1932 to 2019, François de Roubaix, 1939 to 1975. Instruments: wind instruments: haboès, accordéon, alboca, béchonnet, biniou, bodega. String instruments: cithara, sistre, sitar, épinette des Vosges, harpe celtique, tambourin à cordes ou toun-toun, vieille à roue. Percussions: guimbarde, tambourin, xalaparta. Chinese music. Chinese music history. Chinese music is an essential form of Chinese arts, very old and very varied. It developed independently of the music of West Asia, generally modern, although they were influenced by certain instruments, such as the yangqin. It is also influenced by the people of Central Asia, Turks and Mongols, with the erhu, two barbaric strings, an ambiguous instrument. Some regions of China have been enriched with many neighboring cultures, such as countries like Pakistan and other. Due to the size of the territory, Chinese music encompasses very varied types of regional music. Chinese musicians from the 20th century: Han Hong, which has a Tibetan nationality; Tang Yir, which has a Mongolian nationality; Abing, Zuijian; Li Shutong, Li Jinhui, Liu Tianhua, Do Wei. Instruments: wind instruments: Ai Jike, Hu Jin, Banhu, Dihu, Xiao Dihu, Zhong Dihu, Erhu. And percussions: Bianqing, Bianzhong, Fangxiang, Guban, Mokugyo, Paigu, Shimianluo, Yangqin, Yunluo. Spanish music. Spanish music history. The history of Spanish music has been just as diverse and extensive as the history of Spain in general. No other country in Europe can boast of such diverse music resulting from the different cultures that settled in Spain in the past. After the Civil War and during 50 years of dictatorship, Franco, who wanted a total uniformity within the country, banned all aspects of regional culture. Any use, demonstration, or practice of regional languages, literature, and music was prohibited. This does not mean that they disappeared. The Spanish hid from Franco's government and continued to practice their language, dance, and music. At the end of the Franco regime approached, folk music and rock and roll began to flourish again, marking another great event in the history of Spanish music. English and American groups took center stage internationally, and Franco could not prevent Spain from following the same path. The first Spanish pop style imitated French pop, itself derived from British and American pop. Subsequently, Spanish artists added variations of flamenco, giving a more Spanish style to this music that can be still heard today. The boom of the tourist sector in Spain in the 60s and 70s, again, brought new trends from abroad, while the 80s saw the beginning of the movida. Following Franco's death, young people rediscovered the taste for freedom and rock and roll. Pump and pop sounds took center stage, and nothing seems to stop this movement. Famous Spanish musicians from the 20th century: Dolores Abril, Manuel Agujetas, Eva Amaral, Carmen Amaya, Little Angel, Maria Antinea, Emilio Aragon Bermúdez, the Macanita, Hope of the Maera, Antonio Mairena, Manzanita, Pepe Marchena, Marisol, Martiridom, Little Argentinian, Luis Eduardo Aute, Victor Balaguer, Andres de Baro, Beautiful Dorita, Edward Benavente, Yola Berrocal, Boy Bravo, Marisa Medina, Rachel Meller, Micaela, Soledad Miranda, Nati Mistral, Amalia Molina, Antonio Molina, Conjita Montenegro, Grace Montes, Ovidi Montlor, Tito Mora. Instruments: castanets, dulzaina, flabiol, gaita astroiana, gaita cabrieresa, gaita de saco, gaita navarra, Galician gaita, guitarro, hurdy-gurdy, laúd, odrechillo, palmas, rabel, requinto, tambori, viejuela. English music. History of English music. Each of the 4 countries of the United Kingdom has its own diverse and distinctive folk music forms, which flourished until the era of the industrialization, where they began to be replaced by new forms of popular music. Many British musicians have influenced modern music on a global scale, and the UK has one of the world's largest music industries. English, Scottish, Irish, and Welsh folk music, as well as other British styles of music, heavily influenced American music such as American folk music, American march music, old-time, ragtime, blues, and country. The UK has birthed many popular music genres such as beat music, psychedelic music, progressive rock/pop, heavy metal, new wave, and industrial music. In the 20th century, influences from the music of the United States, including blues, jazz, and rock and roll, were adopted in the United Kingdom. Britain saw British rock bands become highly influential around the world in the 1960s and the 1970s. Pop music, a term which originated in Britain in the mid-1950s, as a description for rock and roll and the new youth music styles that it influenced, was developed by British artists like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, whom, among other British musicians, led rock and roll transition into rock music. Famous English musicians of the 20th century: Chris Ackland, Raymond Aggles, Ronnie Aldrich, William Alwyn, Ambrose, Jack Armstrong, Malcolm Arnold, Steve Ashley, Matthew Ashman, Arthur Askey, Richard Austin Lionel Dacres, Lenny Davidson, Cyril Davies, Fanny Davies, Peter Maxwell Davies, Elizabeth de la Porte, Elton Dean, Christopher Darnley, Tobias Delius, Tony DeVitt, Edward Devery, Reginald Dixon, Scott Dobson, Lady Margaret Douglas Home, Ralph Downes, Jacqueline Dupré, Thomas Lucas Dwerden, Philip Dukes Buddy Featherston Haw, Victor Feldman, George Firestone, Horace Finch, Gerald Finzi. Instruments: accordion, clavichord, piano, pipe organ, drums, hang, xylophone, cello guitar, mandolin, violin, duduk, flute, pan flute, saxophone, and trombone. Italian music. Italian music's history. In Italy, music has traditionally been one of the culture makers of Italian national and ethnic identity, and holds an important position in society and in politics. Italian music, innovation, in musical skill, harmony, notation, and theater, enabled the development of opera in the late 16th century, and much of modern Europe classical music, such as the symphony and the concerto, ranges across a broad spectrum of opera and instrumental classic music, and popular music drawn from both native and imported sources. Italian folk music is an important part of the country's musical heritage and has a diverse array of regional styles, instruments, and dances. Instrumental and vocal classical music is an iconic part of the Italian identity, having experimental art music and international fusions to symphonic music and opera. Opera is a part of Italian musical culture and has become a major segment of popular music. Imported genres such as jazz, rock, and hip-hop from the United States are a major part of the Italian culture today. Italy was also an important country in the development of disco and electronic music, with Italy disco being one of the earliest electronic dance genres. Famous Italian musicians from the 20th century: Guido Agosti, Franco Albinelli, Antonio Allegra, Massimo Amfiatorov, Antonio Amori, Giuseppe Aneda, Elio De Angelis, Alfredo Antonini, Emanuele Arciuli, Simone Pace, Vito Pallavicini, Fausto Papetti, Ginislao Paris, Piero Piccioni, Enrico Pieranunzi, Ansaldo Poggi, Giorgio Polaco, Francesco Baliglia Pratella, Roberto Pregario, Luca Pretolesi, Sergio Preziol, Luigi Ferdinando Tagliavini, Danilo Terenzi, Flavio Testi, Ottavio Tibi, Anna Tifu, Armando Trovagioli, Gian Luigi Trovesi, Teresina Tua. Instruments: barrette, bata Piatigroschi, Stradivarius, castanets, seterone, ciataria battente, citerra sarda, ciaramedda, cibasso, conici, fortepiano, hurdy-gurdy, keyboard glockenspiel, lonedas, mandolin, ocarina, organetto, piano, piferro, piva, pomer, putipu, raganella, rebec, sordelina, triciaballaccia, tumbarino, zamponia, zofullo. Arab music history. In the 20th century, after 2,000 years of foreign ruling, any English, French, or European songs get replaced by national Arab music. Female singers were some of the first to try this. Egyptian performer Kulthum and Lebanese singer Fairuz were notable examples of this, both having been popular through the decades that followed, and both are considered legends of Arabic music. Across the Mediterranean, Moroccan singer Zohra Al-Fassiya was the first female performer to achieve wide popularity in the Maghreb region, performing traditional Arab Andalusian folk songs and later recording numerous albums of her own. During the 1940s and the 1960s, Arab music began taking on a more Western tone. Egyptian artists Kulthum and Abdel Halim Hafiz, along with composers Muhammad Abdel Wahab and Baligh Hamdi, used Western instruments in Arab music. By the 1970s, several other singers had followed suit, and a strand of Arab pop was born. Arab pop usually consists of Western-styled songs with Arab instruments and lyrics. Melodies are often a mix between Eastern and Western. Beginning in the mid-1980s, Lydia Qanaan, musical pioneer widely regarded as the first rock star of the Middle East, fused English lyrics and Western sound with Middle Eastern quartertones and microtones, and became the first internationally successful Lebanese recording artist. Western pop music was also influenced by Arabic musics early in the 1960s, leading to the development of surf music, a rock music genre that later gave rise to garage rock and punk rock. Surf rock pioneer Dick Dale, a Lebanese-American guitarist, was greatly influenced by the Arab music he learned from his uncle, particularly the oud melodies and skills that he later used on his electric guitar playing while recording surf rock in the early 1960s. Famous Arab artists from the 20th century: Amr Diab, Mustafa Amar, Najwa Karam, Elisa, Nawal Al-Zoghbi, Nancy Ajram, Haifa Wahb, Angham, Fadl Shaker, Majida Al-Romani, Wael Kfouri, As-Salah Nasri, Miriam Faris, Julia Boutros, Amal Hijazi, Carol Samaha, Yara, Samira Said, Hisham Abbas, كادهم الساحر، مصطفى عمر، إيهاب توفيق، محمد فؤاد، ديانا حداد، محمد منير، لطيفة، شب خالد، جورج وسوف، حكيم، فارس كرام. Instruments: chordophones، عود، قنبوس، بوزوق، أوتار، لوتار، سنتير. Aerophones: ناي، كولاح، سلمياح، منجيراح، سبباح، شاكولي، فريراح، كاسب، بالسبليت، فلويت. Percussions: غريق، داف، بندير، دمباكي، دحولار، درينجاح، باس درينجاح، خشباح، كسوراح، طبل تسجي كانغا، طبل مسندو، طبل بيب، تعاريجة. The end.